couple weeks ago, there's someone selling fake Banksy NFT art pieces. And I actually bought one just to ape into it.
Hey everyone, I'm Kevin from BFB, and boy do I have an amazing interview for you with an NFT expert. And look, the NFT space has not been around for that long, but in the short amount of time that it has been around, this guy has been researching, blogging, and investing throughout the whole NFT space. And so in this following interview, you're going to learn so many actionable insights whether you are an investor or an artist looking to get your feet wet in the NFT space. So I don't recommend you to skip around because there's nuggets spread throughout this entire interview. So if you're looking to get some edge in the NFT space or just get enough information to feel comfortable to get started, then you are in the right place. Just sit back, relax, and just keep on watching. All right, hey Steven, thanks for joining me here today. Just for the audience, can you give a quick intro about yourself and touch on your journey into NFTs so far?
Sure. Hey, Kevin, thanks for having me. So my background is actually in entertainment and media and technology, where those two intersect. So my first job out of college was at a company called Divx. If any of you guys were like torrenting videos back in the day, then you're probably using our software. And if you think about it, Divx was like kind of one of the OG P2P protocols back in the day, or file formats. So I started my career there. From there, I was a co-founder of a movie streaming startup. And then since then, I've been doing some work for talent agencies as well as sports agencies. And so, kind of having that background, I was obviously very interested in the creator economy. And that in combination with dabbling in crypto since 2013. And so kind of like that combination of like, creator economy, entertainment, plus crypto kind of led me to NFTs. It was kind of like a pretty natural progression. So right now I'm currently like building, investing, as well as writing about NFTs right now.
Yeah, and I saw you had like a company or fund per se with another partner about NFTs. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so right now it's just a blog. We call it Fat Cat Fund, for the fun of it. And, possibly maybe we'll kind of like pull together and turn that into a fund in the future. But right now it's just a blog.
Got it. Awesome. Yeah. So how long have you been looking into NFTs so far and just like dabbling, doing your own research and investing?
I want to say for maybe about a year-ish. I think once the whole creator economy thing started taking off about a year or two ago, and, I obviously had a personal interest in crypto as well. So I was kind of looking at, how can we kind of combine those two things? Mm-hmm. And so that's where kind of like NFTs were kind of like the logical choice from there. And so I started kind of just paying a little bit of attention, just playing around with some of the different platforms, the marketplaces, some of the games. And I kind of really started getting into it, I want to say probably fall of 2020. So about 5-6 months ago.
And NFTs haven't really been like taking off. Like when did it even first start? Do you remember when they even first like came into the scene? That wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first NFTs that I first heard about were crypto kitties back in like 2017 during that bull run when it was clogging up the network. I think that was kind of the first time I heard about it. I think from my research, there's actually like earlier NFTs before that. So obviously there's CryptoPunks, but I think even before CryptoPunks, there were a couple of different variations of the Peppies, the rare Peppies, and so they definitely come a long way, and they've evolved quite a bit. And I think overall we're still pretty early in the game when it comes to NFTs. I think there's a lot of different applications to it. Super excited about the technology as a whole. I think it could really be a game changer. And, my personal hypothesis about crypto is that it's generally, people have always asked, like, what's the kind of Netscape moment for crypto? Mm-hmm. And I've always kind of felt that the Netscape moment for crypto will probably be something entertainment media related. Obviously, I'm biased because that's my background. But if you kind of look at previous technology cycles, that's kind of what you see with previous technology cycles. Right. And so I think NFTs are like the perfect candidate for that.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I also remember CryptoKitties, but it felt like afterwards there was quite a lull, like nothing really about NFTs happening for like a year or two before it started picking up steam again in like 2020. Is that how you saw it too?
Yes and no. I mean, there were definitely some projects during that time that kind of like, persisted through the bear market, so things like OpenSea, I think Rarible started around 2018. Decentraland was kind of like one of those older projects that kind of
Right.
like survived that whole bear market and is kind of, doing pretty well today. So there's definitely been some NFT startups that have kind of been around the block and survived the bear market and are now stronger for it.
For sure. And in terms of people wanting to get started, so most of the people listening here today they know about crypto, but they haven't really dove into the NFT space yet. So they're not absolute newbies when it comes to like wallets and stuff. But for these kind of people, how would you recommend for them to get started? Like, are there some great resources or sites to go visit for them?
Sure. I mean, I'm talking my own book here, but like at fatcatfund.com, we have a NFT repository where we're kind of collecting all of the best articles and resources there. But I think now there's so many good resources out there. If you just kind of Google like NFT guide, there's a couple of good ones. Linda Shea has a pretty good guide. Peter Yang has a good NFT guide for creators. So if you just kind of follow one of those guides, just to kind of get your feet wet as kind of like an NFT 101. And then I think from there, the best way to learn from there is to actually just start playing around with NFTs. So start exploring the marketplaces like OpenSea, Rarible, Super Rare, Nifty Gateway. Try to buy some if you can. Play some of the games like Axie Infinity, Decentraland. I think that's really the best way to learn, just kind of like really get into it and start playing around with it yourself. That's kind of how you'll get that light bulb moment. I would say if you want to go a level deeper, there's a lot of good, smart people on Twitter to follow on NFTs, and I'll keep tabs on them.
All right, I'll be sure to drop the links for everyone watching, those guides you mentioned, and also your own Twitter and your own website too. I remember I didn't know you were into NFTs, but in one of the groups we're in, I saw you post that like bird's eye view of the ecosystem of NFTs. I was like, wow, I didn't know there were so many involved. Like obviously the most popular ones you listed, I knew, but you like carefully bucketed each one. I'll definitely want to touch on that and ask you more about that in a sec. But right now, so you kind of touched on this already, but besides the ones you touched on, are there any other platforms or tools that you use on like a daily or weekly basis that you recommend?
On like a daily basis, Twitter, honestly, just to kind of like find out the latest news and kind of see what people are talking about, what's trending. One resource that I really like is CryptoSlam. I think it's cryptoslam.io.
Okay.
So they basically have sales revenue numbers for the top NFT, mostly collectibles. So things like Top Shots, Hash Masks, CryptoPunks. They have some pretty good data, and they actually break it down per collectible. So those are pretty good. If you're into like NBA Top Shot, there's a number of like analytics tools. There's like a Top Shot Explorer. There's a couple of those tools as well that are specific to NBA Top Shot. So depending on kind of like which collectible or which NFT you're looking at, you could probably find some like custom analytics tools for them.
Got it. Okay. I haven't seen those, even though I have checked out the NBA Top Shot and other ones. So I'll have to be sure to dig in to see where these analytics tools are. Let's talk a little bit about profits, because obviously a lot of people may appreciate the art, but they also are intrigued by the profit potential. Can you touch on some high-level strategies you've seen for both the creators and also the traders?
Sure. So I'll start with like the artist creator perspective. I think for most artists, like the easiest place to start is to simply take their previous work and turn it into NFTs and mint them into NFTs. So we're seeing a lot of that, for better or worse. That's kind of like the no-brainer, easy place for them to start. I think something that's been really exciting for artists is that now they could, through NFTs, they could actually collect royalties on secondary sales. And so that's been something that is really exciting for artists. If you think from the artist perspective, historically, once they sell their piece of art, and if it gets resold for $1 million, they get nothing from that secondary sale. So now with these royalties as part of NFTs, they could actually partake in that. So that's really exciting for artists. I think another strategy that we're seeing a lot of from artists is actually pairing NFTs with real world items. So that could be a music block, such as the example from the DJ Blau, unisocks, so merch, so pairing that up with physical goods. So I definitely think we'll see more of that coming from the artist side. I think from an investor side, right now there's not too many ways to kind of get exposure to NFTs. The most direct way is to simply just buy NFTs off some of the different marketplaces. So that's the most direct way. It's also the most risky way, in my opinion. You're starting to kind of see indexes pop up. So NFTX, NiftyX are essentially creating indexes and fractionalizing a set of NFTs into an index. So that kind of helps diversify some of your risk there. And I think the third way is to simply just buy the project tokens of the NFT projects. So I think right now those are kind of like the three main ways for an investor to get exposure to NFTs. If you want to be really degen, there's starting to kind of be like some NFT yield farming projects popping up.
Oh wow, did not even know that.
If you want to get into that, yeah.
So in terms of like pro tips from you for especially the traders, what do you recommend for them like not to do when they start dipping their feet into the NFT space?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing to kind of like avoid is to just ape into an NFT that you bought and just like expect the number to go up, right? So I think like just like with any other kind of crypto or DeFi project, you kind of want to do your own research. I think some of the things to look into specifically is to kind of look at, is this NFT really as scarce as the seller is claiming it to be? So that's something to look into. Also, something to keep in mind is like, even if you're buying an NFT, it doesn't necessarily mean you own the copyright or the trademark to that work. And so that's another area to look into and to be aware of and to research. I'd be aware of fakes, look into, is the seller truly the artist and the creator? To kind of give a quick example, there's like a couple weeks ago, there's someone selling fake Banksy NFT art pieces. And I actually bought one just to ape into it. Even though I kind of knew there's a very low chance of it actually being a Banksy NFT art piece. Like I kind of looked at it from an EV point of view, where if there was just a 1% chance of it actually being Banksy's first NFT collection, then it'd be worth it. But it turned out not to be it. And so in that case, I was okay with it because I thought the piece was funny. And so there's like some entertainment value to it for me. So I think ultimately probably like the best advice, if you're going to buy any, like, especially when it comes to NFT art, make sure it's something that you actually want. And so don't just buy it with the expectation that the number will go up, because that may not actually happen.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I know a lot of people probably make that same mistake, that they just expect it to be an NFT and hence will have demand. But a question that I got from one of our community members specifically is, let's say they don't have like dozens of ETH to sling around at NFTs and get one of those that it's going to be like popular. How do you recommend people to get started with like less than $100 or just a few $100s per se?
So going back to like the different ways to get exposure. So like, you could buy the project tokens, you could buy some of the indexes of NFTs through like NFTX, for example. Or, if you actually search hard enough on like OpenSea, places like OpenSea and Rarible, you can find some interesting NFT art pieces on there. You might have to do a lot of digging, but you could definitely find them. There's other platforms. So for instance, like NBA Top Shot, they do have drops. For instance, they just had one over the weekend. I think it was like $9 a pack. But you do kind of have to like be aware of the drop, prepare for the drop, and actually like show up to the drop early and on time in order to actually be able to buy those at that price point.
Is it first come, first serve for those drops?
Yes and no. They're first come, first serve, and like to showing up in the waiting line. But then once you're in the waiting list line, they kind of like randomize the queue. And so you definitely want to show up on time. I think generally speaking, the earlier you show up, like you'll generally get a better number, but I think that's not guaranteed. So yeah, it's one of those things where you kind of have to like set it in your calendar and kind of like keep your eye on it like a hawk.
Yeah, I saw not only Top Shot, but other ones using this like drops model. Can you talk a little bit more about your thoughts on drops in general for, I guess, the creator platform side and also for the speculator side too.
Yeah, so I mean, I think drops are very interesting because they kind of come from like say the world of like fashion or merchandise goods. I think specifically things like sneakers, where you kind of see that a lot in the world of sneakers, where there might be an exclusive drop, limited edition Jordan sneakers or something like that. And so we're kind of seeing that same tactic being played out here. There's obviously some similarities where a lot of these sneaker drops are limited edition. A lot of these NFT drops are limited edition, limited quantities. And so I think that's kind of why we're seeing a lot of companies and marketplaces use the drop strategy. I think it's also a great marketing strategy too. I think when you kind of have these drops, it creates a lot of FOMO and it creates a lot of social media buzz and it creates a lot of marketing excitement. And so I think for the companies, it's a really smart thing to do. As the investor collector, it's sometimes hard, right? You kind of have to like set your calendar, sit by your computer all day, like watching it like a hawk. So sometimes that can be kind of difficult. But that said, if you don't want to do that, you could always just buy it off the secondary marketplace.
Right. And on our channel, we like to kind of look at both the pros and cons of everything in the crypto space. So for this, can you share some of the things that you're more like skeptical or concerned about in the broader NFT space?
Yeah, so I think NFTs have kind of really taken off in the last couple of weeks. There's been a lot of like big headlines, and it's generally like the big sales that generate the headlines and generate that excitement. But I think the thing to keep in mind is like I think like a lot of other industries right now, it looks like NFTs are a hitch-driven business, which means that there's really only a few that really kind of make it huge and kind of like propel the market and like 99 or 95% of the offerings out there aren't going to see that same level of success. So I think that's something to kind of keep in mind when you're looking at and evaluating NFTs. Like I said, right now there's not like a good way to kind of like weed out fake sellers. So that's something that you kind of have to like be aware of and kind of like do your research on. As I mentioned, like not having copyright or trademark ownership is a big thing. Certain marketplaces are allowing you to kind of search for the pieces that do give you copyright ownership. I think Mintable has like a checkbox where you can kind of check, is the copyright being transferred? So that's something to kind of look into when you're doing your research. And I think just overall, as the market kind of grows bigger overall, I just think, with more supply, the average price is going to fall over time. I think it's just kind of inevitable. That being said, I think as bigger names and there's more applications of NFTs, like at the top end, you'll see the prices continue to increase. But I think if you just look at the overall average sale price, those will probably drop as supply increases.
One thing I've heard that some people have said, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you can be anonymous when you bid for NFTs, right? Some people are wondering if there's like wash trading, or essentially they bid up their own NFTs to feel like more demand than there actually is. So just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I think it's happening. I can't say I know for sure exactly how much of it is happening or, like what percentage of those big sales where it's happening. But I definitely think it is happening on some level. I think for the average investor, it probably doesn't matter, unless you're playing at that level where you're buying pieces for millions of dollars or $500,000, it probably won't affect you. But I think it is important to kind of be aware, like that probably is happening.
Got it. And looking ahead to the future of the space, how do you see this evolving in the next like 2 to 3 years? Specifically, what are you wanting to happen in the NFT space in the next 2 years?
So I think right now, like the biggest problem with NFTs is liquidity. And so I do expect to see a lot of projects and startups trying to address that. We're starting to see a number of them popping up today. So specifically things like, derivatives of NFTs, fractionalization of NFTs, loans of NFTs. So kind of like, I think some of the stuff that we saw in DeFi will start to bleed over into NFTs, I think. And so one example that I'm particularly keen on is, what does a cash flow yield-bearing NFT look like? How does one make that happen? I think that's something that is really interesting, in my opinion. For the most part, right now, liquidity is, with individual NFTs, liquidity mostly comes from just buying and selling. I think some of the things that probably see in the next couple of years, social tokens. I think if you think about it from the creator's perspective, you're seeing a rush of artists and creators rush into the space. A lot of them are going to realize maybe it doesn't make sense for me to kind of mint NFTs and sell them as art or collectibles, but a lot of them do have some pretty engaged followings. And so I think what we'll see is like NFTs being used as essentially digital membership cards in the same way that, you might have a membership card to your gym, or if you have a country club membership, you have a membership card for that. I think we'll probably see the digital equivalent of that on NFTs using things like social tokens. And so I think we'll probably see that next. Something that I think is actually flying under the radar that I'm personally excited about is actually going from digital to physical goods. Again, right now we're seeing a lot of artists taking their existing physical art and then, tokenizing them into NFTs. So going from physical to digital, we're seeing a lot of that right now. But I actually think kind of like a dark horse is going from digital to physical.
Was it Beeple or someone else who had that like painting that they'd send you with an NFT?
Yeah, most of them are doing that nowadays. Most of like the top artists are now doing that. So I think Beeple did some. He sent, I think it was like a frame, a physical like photo frame with the NFT in it. Blau has done something similar. There's the band, I think Yellowheart is doing something similar. So we're definitely seeing a lot of that happening.
Yeah, I think that's definitely more tangible for some people. Like even for people who aren't the full skeptics of NFTs, some of my friends who are more like crypto whales, they said that they would buy those physical merged NFTs that you're talking about because that has something to like look and feel and the bragging rights on the blockchain essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff is all about bragging rights and like flexing basically, right? So like if I have a CryptoPunk, I might try to flex that on my Twitter profile. Or, if I have a social token, I might want to flex that. Like, hey, I'm part of this exclusive club. And like the physical good is kind of like the extension of that flexing, in my opinion.
Yeah, and about the membership tokens, I think I really like that idea as a content creator myself to potentially use with our audience, because I saw like Logan Paul do those like pictures NFTs, and I was shocked that people would actually buy like pictures of that. But I can totally understand if he had like his own token that people can get his first t-shirts or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a modern twist on fan clubs, right? So like back in the day, we had like those like street team fan clubs back in the day that were just like purely volunteers, like handing out flyers or whatnot. And nowadays, like using an NFT or a token, you could kind of like use that as your proof of being a super fan.
Right.
And from that, you can kind of get benefits from the artist, such as, exclusive content, exclusive access, being first in line to like drops, stuff like that.
That makes sense. So you kind of touched a bit on this last one, but I guess, is there a particular area or project per se that you are super excited about in terms of what they're building for the NFT space?
Something that I've been spending a lot of time on the last couple of days, just because it's fun, was I've been going through Valuables by Cent, which is basically tweets that are turned into NFTs.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if they'll be worth anything, like who knows, but I just think it's kind of fun. You can
Did you buy some?
I did. And there's a bunch of offers that I've sent out as well. So it's just kind of fun, right? Kind of like buying someone's tweet or whatnot. That's been something I've been looking at the last couple of days. I think like more longer term metaverses. So metaverses such as Decentraland, CryptoVoxels, Somnium. I think those are kind of no-brainers, especially when you look at like, say, the younger generations that grew up on Minecraft. I think playing in metaverses is just a natural progression for them. So I think metaverses is a no-brainer. Social tokens, as I mentioned, so things like Rally or Roll, I think those are kind of probably next up in the NFT wave. And then longer term, I'm really excited about things like B20 or YGG, where you're basically tokenizing an entire collection. And so in the example of B20, they bought the entire collection, the everyday collection from Beeple, which is like $2 or $3 million or something like that, right? Where, the average person cannot partake in that But what they did is like once they bought the collection, they essentially tokenized it and issued an NFT so that everyday people can get some fractional ownership of that collection. So to me, that's super cool. I think it makes high value collections and art and collectibles accessible to more people. So to me, I'm really excited about that in the long term.
For sure, yeah. And in terms of the tokenized tweets, I thought that was very interesting. Like Jack Dorsey got his first tweet tokenized too. But one thing that really made me chuckle was when someone bought a tokenized tweet that was later deleted by the original author. So it's like, wait, where did this go? What tweet did you buy? So I guess there's definitely worries like that, right?
There's still those risks, right? I think NFTs are still like on par with like a lot of DeFi projects where there's, you could essentially be rug pulled in a way. Definitely got to like do your research. And that's why I think at the end of the day, if you look at it as like, this is something that I want to have anyways, regardless of its value, I think that's probably like the best approach.
And so in terms of yourself, you said you've been buying NFTs too. Have you also been flipping some, selling it back into the marketplace?
I haven't yet. So right now I'm just buying. So as I mentioned, I'm kind of taking the approach of what I buy is stuff that I like and I want to keep. And so I haven't sold any yet. That's not to say I won't. I think I'm definitely kind of keeping tabs on them and seeing how they perform. But at this point, I'm primarily buying individual NFTs that I personally like or I think are funny or have some sort of entertainment or even flexing function to it. So right now I'm just holding.
And the last thing I kind of want to ask you about is that like bird's eye view of the NFT space, that beautiful picture or just like graphic that you made. Yeah, the map. Can you, I guess, give us a little bit high level overview about how you created that and what all we should just know about that when we take a look?
So that was just created just to kind of scratch my own itch, really. Just because like, I couldn't find like any resources that had like a comprehensive look of the entire NFT industry. And I was just kind of creating like my own little spreadsheet on my own. And so we're just like, okay, why don't we just kind of like turn this into a map and kind of release it and publish it. And so, our first iteration had about 60 some projects, didn't include any games because if we did, it would have become like 100 or 200.
I see.
And we kind of knew like the moment we published this map, it would just be out of date like immediately, which is definitely the case. And so our plan is kind of update it probably once a month. Definitely like within the past month, we've either been notified or found like another 50 or 60 or so NFT projects in the meantime. Right. So it's definitely hard to kind of stay on top of it, but it's something that, we're probably going to keep updating as time goes on.
Personally, when I first came across your map, I was shocked at how many there were because, obviously I've heard of the big ones, but there's like so many different niches that I didn't even knew existed.
Same here. I think when we first started putting together this Google spreadsheet between myself and my friend Kevin, we were expecting maybe like 20, 30 projects. And then kind of like, as we were kind of adding to, we're like, oh crap, like there's a lot of stuff on here. A lot of the categories overlap as well. And so like, it's not always easy to kind of like categorize or bucket a project into a particular bucket. But I think that just kind of like speaks to like how fast the space is moving, right? I guess anyone who's been following DeFi, right, knows it's like impossible to kind of keep up. It just moves so fast.
Right.
And I think NFTs are kind of like in that same ballpark where it's like things are just moving so fast. It's really hard to keep up. Hopefully things like our industry map can kind of help give people a quick snapshot, bird's eye view. And then from there, people can kind of decide which area or category they want to dive deeper into.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Steven, and sharing your knowledge that you've accumulated so far in the NFT space. Just real quick, for people who want to follow you and check out what you're working on, what's the best place to do that?
Yeah, so fatcatfun.com. FUN, that's where we're blogging about NFTs. That's where you could find the industry map that we'll be updating once a month. That's where you could find the NFT repo of top articles that we found along the way. And we've got some pretty interesting announcements coming up too, so you could follow us there. If anyone has any questions or whatnot, you feel free to DM me on Twitter. So my Twitter is Steven with a V, Neets, Neets. So happy to kind of talk shop and try to help out in whatever way I can.
Sounds good. You heard it here, guys. Go follow him on Twitter too. All right. Thank you, Steven.
Cool. Thanks, Kevin. I'll see you around.